why did we choose this book? So we just kicked off this channel. Why did we choose this as our first book to review?
And it is my absolute favorite book. Welcome friends, Kalina and Tapas here from Eat, Read, Sleep, and this is our deep dive discussion segment of books that we have read. If you don't want to hear our opinions or our stories or our feelings on the book, head on over to our quick short book review, 10 minutes, and you'll get to the meat of the book. But otherwise, join us, welcome, and today we're going to be vibing with The 4 Agreements, The Practical Guide to Personal Happiness and Freedom. This is a book by Miguel Ruiz, and it is my absolute favorite book.
All right, so first question for you, Kalina. Why did we choose this book? So we just kicked off this channel. Why did we choose this as our first book to review?
This book has been life-changing for me. So I think that Tapas, at least what I feel like is we read a lot of books. We read a lot of self-help books and whatnot. And you kind of, over time, with everything that you read, the foundation and the basis of a lot of different books is very similar, right? The foundation of happiness and success. It's very much the same if you look at it. You just have to find that book that resonates with you, where that same message actually connects with you. And this is the one book. It's such a short read, and I just connected with it so much so, and it just made everything so simple for me, and I can reference it. And this is like my little Bible. I have it on my nightstand, and I literally read pages out of it every single day. I love it.
Yeah, and it's a really quick, easy to read. In terms of how long it is, it's only 140 pages, so you can go through it quite a few times. I've gone through this quite a few times as well, and I've also listened to it. One of my favorite things about this book is that it is very easy to read. It's great for new beginners who are just trying to get into reading. Some of the self-help stuff is a little bit more complicated. This book is a way to go if you want to just start off your reading journey.
Yep, absolutely. It's changed my life. And I do want to give a shout out. I actually got this book as a gift many, many years ago from one of my old bosses. And it was just sitting on my desk for years. And I picked it up a couple of times to read. I will say, even though the book is a quick read, the first chapter is actually really hard to get through and understand. But once you get past that first chapter, the rest of it is like flying colors. But I tried picking up this book to read a couple of times. I didn't get it. It didn't resonate with me until about 2 years ago, and something just clicked. It just felt so great reading it. Everything, I think it was just my time. I'm very big on being at the right place at the right time and having everything align. And so I felt like that was that time for this book to connect with me, and I just absolutely love it. So I'm super excited to be talking about this book with you guys today, and going over some of the great takeaways from this.
Yes. So as we mentioned in our book review, this is broken down to 6 parts that I thought were really important for us. First one was the domestication and dream of the planet. Then we went into each agreement one by one, the 4 agreements. And then lastly, it was the Toltec path to freedom. So let's start off with the first part that we talked about, which is
this is my favorite
the
part,
domestication
actually.
and dream of the planet. Now, like you just said, Kalina, the first part is very difficult to read, especially for people who are just kind of thrown into it.
Yep.
I've given this recommendation for this book to maybe at least 3 of my friends, and they have all stopped at the first part. You're like, what are they talking about? I don't understand what they're saying. Yes. And I'm like, you know what, just get through it, or try to really understand what he's trying to say. So you did a really good job of going through it in our review. So walk us through what kind of causes people to kind of get off the rails with this.
So this part is about the domestication and the dream of the planet. And I think what makes it so hard is it's almost kind of like that hippie-ish spiritual side that not a lot of, if this is new to you, it's kind of hard to understand. But what I really like about it is how it's broken down. So the domestication part of this book is understanding that we are all domesticated. The way that we believe things, the way that we see things, these are all things that have been instilled into us before we were even born. We actually don't have a say in how we've been domesticated. So in a way, we are created and conformed in a certain way, how our parents raise us, what society wants us to do, how social media wants wants us to think and feel about ourselves, how our government controls us with just everything that's going on. And it's that understanding that we have been domesticated and that we need to break out of this domestication and see what's really in front of us. And then the other part that it goes into is the dream of the planet. And this part is actually my favorite part of the book, because dream of the planet actually is an actual realization that every single one of us is walking this earth in our own personal dreams. What you see, Tapas, what you hear, what you understand, what you say to me, you and I will never ever see exactly eye to eye, because your upbringings are different, your experiences have been different, how you've been raised, all of that has made you who you are today to create your own specific thoughts. So it's very cool, at least for me, because it helps me realize and have almost like a empathy and better understanding of other people when they have a different point of view from me. And when someone's trying to share something, like, I understand that I may not understand, and likewise this person may never understand what I'm saying, and I'm okay with it.
Yeah. And you know, the key part of that is we all live within our own dreams. So again, we can't expect others to understand us as well, right?
Exactly.
So I think that's been super important. And one thing, you know, being a father of a 6-year-old, and that's in itself is crazy. One thing that this chapter has helped me realize is the domestication part. So I don't want to, like the book says, you walk into this earth with some of the preconceived notions of certain things. You already have opinions that your parents have given you and that you don't even know about, right? Like, you don't, like, I was born with the opinion that you have to become a doctor, an engineer to be successful in this world, and that's just how I was raised. So for me personally, any occupation beyond that was like, oh, this person's not successful. They don't know what they're doing. So that kind of helped me with my daughter and say, you know what? I'm not going to give her those domestication ideas like, hey, this is how you should think. This is what the truth is. I'm going to let her form her own opinion and form her own dreams, because that's what she's going to be living off of. I don't want to give her that whole, like, you know, my own opinions on things and put onto her. Yeah. I think that's why a lot of people get lost in that too.
Yeah. And I think the thing to really realize is that it's not anyone's fault, right? Yes. It's not our parents' fault. This is just how the world works. Everyone's just walking around in their own dream, kind of meshing with each other, not really. And it's just, there's no one really to blame. And that book goes into a lot of things about faults and assumptions and things like that. But, you know, it's realizing that we're on our own dream, we're doing our own thing. And as long as you mind your own business, that's where a lot of the happiness and the freedom comes from.
Yep. And also, I think we tend to seek out the happiness from others.
Yes.
Right. So, like, you know, if my wife doesn't tell me she loves me, I don't feel like I'm somebody who needs to be loved. Right. It has to come from within. That's something that he really emphasized on, that it's all about self-love and telling yourself.
Yeah. How many of us need that validation, right? Yes. We're seeking that validation. We've been brought up to seek that validation. That is part of the domestication. You aren't good enough until you get the approval from your parents, or when you know, you bring home that A+. Like, you're always needing that validation from another person, an outsider that is living a different dream than you are.
Yeah. So as you can see, you know, as we're talking through it is quite a concept to understand. And somebody like myself who's read it, like, I didn't understand it maybe until the third time going through, and like, you know what? Because what I would normally do was I had the audiobook of this and I also had the book. I would just skip to the first agreement and like, I'm not gonna be the first part. I don't know can't understand it. And then talking to Kalina, she kind of would explain it to me a little bit. I'm like, I still don't understand it.
You guys, I had to like highlight, underline, scratch out everything like word for word, because I don't know, maybe we're just not very bright, but like I just couldn't get it. But it did take me a couple of readings through to understand that first part of the book.
It is quite a concept, but again, once you really understand the whole dream sequences and how we're kind of just living our own personal lives in our own vision, that really kind of puts it all together. So if you've read this book in the past, you picked it up and you thought, I don't get this book, you put it away.
Please try
Give it a try.
Yes.
If you need to do what I do, I mean, I wouldn't recommend it, but do what I do, skip to the first agreement and just go from there.
Yeah. And then you can go back and it kind of ties it together as well. Yep. So let's jump to the first agreement. Yes. And I'd like to hear your opinions, Tapas, on this one, because I think you are really good with this first agreement.
Yeah. So first one is be impeccable with your word. Now, uh, I used to preface this saying that I'm a naturally a very quiet person. And so when Colleen would ask me, hey, why are you so quiet today? I'm just saying I'm being impeccable with my word. That's not the same thing. I would just say it as an excuse to be quiet, but that's not the same thing. This, like we mentioned in our book review, it is the most toughest and the most important one to honor. The reason why it's the toughest is because you have to really think about what you're saying. For
Which
me
is
personally,
really hard for me.
It is, yeah. Not to think on a whim, not to react to something right away. Take that extra 1 to 2 seconds. Think about what the situation is. Step back a little bit. It's really important. And the key word here is the word, because the written word and the spoken word is very important. And it's only something that humans can do. That we need to make sure we are constantly being cognizant of. So for me, I'm always, now what I do is I any situation that's very stressful, whatever it might be, I just pause, take a long pause, think clearly about what I want to do, and also what I want to say, because people will misconstruct things a lot.
All right, I'm going to rebuttal you right there.
Okay.
I'm going to say that the most important part of this first agreement is actually the impeccable part.
Okay.
So impeccable, I didn't have to look it up. It goes into it in the book. But impeccable comes from the Latin word that actually means sin. So impeccable means without sin. And a sin is anything that you do which goes against yourself. So in essence, being impeccable with your word is to make sure that what you say is honest and true and doesn't hurt yourself and hurt others, which is why I thought that was so powerful, because everything that you say that comes out of your mouth should be intentional and not just, like you said, a reaction to something.
Right. And one good example in this book that he gives is around Germany. We have the infamous leader there in the past, World War II, Hitler. He goes into it a little bit, talking about how that person used the word to rise the entire nation and pretty much get the whole buy-in from the entire country to genocide, and they were all okay with it. And it all started with him using his word. So that's the white magic and black magic.
Right.
As well.
So he used his word. The book goes into when you speak, your words are either considered white magic or black magic. So if you're using your words for good and to care for others, it's white magic. And if in the case of the story that you're bringing up, that's black magic. You're using it to do harm and to do bad against others.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So very cool to also realize the power that you have, right? And I think that's one thing that I also took away from this part is, yes, being impeccable with your word, but also realizing the impact that you have with your word on other people, and that we are all very powerful with what we have. And sometimes we don't realize how much we can hurt others.
Yes, agreed. And so this is, and even the author himself, he does recognize that this is the most important one. So he does spend quite some time on it. It's almost about, I think, 21 pages of the entire book is just on the first agreement, which is why it's so important to. And I go to this specific chapter all the time, because there are moments in my job, in my personal life, that I struggle with. And of course, I am a leader, so I am speaking most of the time. So I need to make sure I'm more cognizant of what I'm saying to my peers or to the people that work for me.
Yes.
Right?
So T, you're actually really good with this. I will share with you guys, I'm going to be vulnerable. I am not. This one is the hardest one for me because I talk a lot. I say what's on my mind. I don't think before I say things. I'm very reactive. And so being impeccable is something that I actively have to work on. So yes, this is on my nightstand. I try to read, for 15, 20 minutes every morning before I start my day, before I even pick up my phone or anything like that. This is the first thing I go to. And it's just kind of like a daily affirmation of just watch your mouth, Kalina. Like, just watch yourself, because you can get into a lot of trouble and you can hurt a lot of people.
Yeah. So some of the practices or some of the action items that we had in our book review, the first one was allow your mind to only accept seeds of love and self-care. So how does one do that?
That's a really good question. So, when you think, so being impeccable with your word is not just with your word, but it's also with your thought as well, right? So not just saying bad words, but also not thinking bad thoughts. And I think that's also the hardest part, because we are our own toughest critic. We have been innately brought up to criticize ourselves and be really hard on ourselves. And so this is where that comes to me is allow your mind to only think the good thoughts first and foremost. Only think positive thoughts. Whenever you have a negative thought come into you, just brush it aside. There's one thing he said in there: if you don't think about it, if you don't agree to it, then it doesn't become true or real. So anything that's negative or bad that comes your way, get it out of your mind, allow the good thoughts to come in, and then naturally that would be easier for you to also speak the white magic.
Yeah, agreed.
Yep.
Forgive and forget was the next one that we had on there.
Yeah.
Now, for me, this one is one that I tend to do a lot, which is, yes, people will say things to you, or they'll say things about you, maybe behind your back, whatever it might be, and you just have to say, you know what, this is not about me. Their words that they're saying about me negatively is not directed towards me. It's more about them. So that's kind of how I've always looked at it. And I don't take things. I don't necessarily take everything that people say to heart, whether it's positive or negative. And I think we went into that too.
Do you ever forget and not forgive?
Yeah.
I'm a mother of two, you guys. I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old at home. I forget things all the time. I had pregnancy brain, then mommy brain, and then work brain. I forget everything all the time. But sometimes I know I'm mad. Right. I just don't know why I'm mad. So then I hold on to that feeling of not being able to forgive, even though I can't exactly remember specifically why I'm mad. So this kind of goes hand in hand of just letting everything go. Like that dream of what happened, what that other person did to you, said to you, that's their dream. That's what happened. You can just cut it off and not let that be a part of your dream and your reality.
Yep, agreed. Third one we had was express only positivity for and of others. Yep. So
that kind of ties into the first one, right?
Exactly.
Just good thoughts and good words.
And one thing that he does mention is in the book is also gossiping.
Oh,
right?
Yes.
So
that's a good part.
Gossiping is
black
magic, right? You're saying things about somebody else or negative about them, and you're kind of creating this cloud, and you're also creating a judgment for others. So like if let's say me and Kalina were working together, and she said, "Hey, this colleague of ours, they suck," and I'm just gonna go into it with that notion, this person is not good. Right? You kind of create
biased,
and you create that black magic cloud around whoever you're influencing too. So the best thing to do is do not gossip.
It's also a form of domestication almost, right?
Because
if I were to do that, I'm also forming the thoughts for you and creating that reality for you of that person. Yeah. And that actually, I will say, was one of the ones that I am actively cutting out of my life. And honestly, it's easier than I thought it would be. Whenever I hear at work, gossip mill like crazy, right? But it's so easy to be like, I don't want to hear it. And I find I'm so much happier. I'm not drawn into the gossip. I'm not drawn into the drama. And it's just, I'm just doing me, and I don't really care what anyone else is up to. It's not my business.
Yeah. And sometimes if somebody does give me gossip, and again, there are friends that will tell you gossip and you listen to it, because you can't just like, hey, I don't want to hear it, and then you shut them out. What I do tend to do is I also will think of the person that they're gossiping about. Why would they do that? Right. So like, again, you have to ask the question, hey, why did this person lash out? Why does my friend think this person's negative? I'm putting myself in the other person's shoes as well, just to try to get a good mindset around it.
Yeah, and then that allows you to have a little more empathy and understanding of how they've been domesticated and kind of the dream that they are living in. Yeah. And then it allows you to not hold it against them as well. So personal freedom and release for you, I guess. So the second agreement is one that has been very helpful for me, and that is don't take anything personally. A quote from this section is, you take it personally because you agree with what the person has said. It's pretty powerful. And I think it's something that no one would like to admit as to why they're getting upset. But deep down somewhere, it hit a nerve with you because you agree with it, because you have been domesticated to have that thought growing up, and now it's coming to the surface and it doesn't feel good. You don't like it, so you take it personally. and then you react. Another quote from this section is, when you make it a strong habit not to take anything personally, you avoid many upsets in your life. Your anger, your jealousy, your envy, all of that disappears, and even your sadness will simply disappear if you don't take anything personally. So this has been something that I have been actively working on, and it's helped me a lot because I've gone through a lot of trials postpartum with work and going through my own personal mindset challenges. This has been key for me to kind of find peace with myself, because, you know, I realize that when you take things personally, and the book goes into this, you trap yourself in your own personal importance because you operate under this selfish thought that you are important enough to be that center of that thought, right? You start to get depressed. You start to get unhappy because you start to believe all of these negative things. And so once you stop believing it, you surprisingly find out how much happier you can be. And that actually has rang very true for me.
Yeah, I agree. And this one is, this agreement is also very, very impactful because, especially the first quote for me, because you take it personally because you agree with them. Like, let's say, and then the book goes into it, like, let's say your mom comes in and says, you're fat. You can just say, you know what, I am working on my weight. If you are fat, as long as you know and you have self-love, you're not going to take it personally. You just think, you know what, my mom might be just projecting, right? But you will feel upset and sad if you take that, even from your mother. You take that and say, you know what, that's a fact, I am fat. And you bring yourself down that way.
Yeah.
So I this was one that when I read it, I was like, yes, I must make sure I'm not taking anything personally, because it is not about me that this person's saying anything.
Yeah. And that goes back to the first one too, right? It's that dream that the other person is living in. What they see is not the truth of what you see, right? So it doesn't really matter what they say.
Yeah.
And conversely, of not taking anything personally, when someone says something,
Right.
the one part that you really bring up a lot is not to take praises or compliments.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, you know, this also is goes back to self-love. You should know, I know what my strengths and what I'm really good at and what I love about myself. So I don't need to seek out praise or compliments or anything. I'm just like, you know what, I know I'm really good at this, X, Y, and Z.
But isn't this one just so hard? Like, we've all been domesticated to think that way, to seek that validation, to be, you know, for that high five, that golden star, that pat on the back.
Yeah.
Like,
but self-love starts from self. Right?
So wise, yes.
Right? So that's why, you know, we need to also avoid taking praise, and because sometimes what happens is that you might get a little too high on yourself too, right? Like someone says and says, hey, you know, you're an amazing leader. Like, yes, I am the best.
So good.
And your team is like, geez, the worst. And that's why I say about me too. You know, it's one of those things that you have to make sure there's a good balance between negative and positive. And again, it goes all about you knowing yourself.
Yeah. And this is hard, right?
Yeah.
We can't just simply say, oh, don't take anything personally, and then just let all the punches come and it just rolls off. It doesn't just happen like that. But there are things that you can do to kind of remind yourself and make it a little easier. And at least for me, first and foremost, is be humble. Like, I am nobody important. No one cares enough about me to give a second thought about me. So whatever they say, 2 seconds later, they're already turned around talking about someone else to someone else or whatever. I'm no longer at their thought of their mind.
Praise it, Kendrick Lamar, praise it.
Sit down. So if I take it personally, then that means that I actually think I'm important enough for to be that topic of discussion for someone else. And I'm not. No one cares.
Yep. Second one was realize that nothing other people do or say is because of you, it's because of them. So I saw this, I don't know why this one really connected with me, but I saw a TikTok this morning. It was with Selma Hayek. And she was saying that I can cuss you out in my native language and you have no idea what you're saying. I'm telling you the worst things about you. I hate you, I blah, blah. You don't know what I'm saying. You're just probably gonna laugh,
And it might even sound beautiful.
right? You're just like, oh, okay, well,
Wow.
I know what you're saying. Okay, whatever. It's like, well, why can't you gel with somebody that you can understand and communicate, understand that language? Let's say somebody is saying all this stuff to you. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Roll it off,
Yeah.
right? It will only affect you because you allow it to, and people are upset with you because they might just have an upset too. And then one more thing in this book was how there is here's an example of the kid singing and the dad coming home late from work, right? And the dad comes home and he's really tired. It's a long day. He's worked 12 hours, super tired, exhausted, all that stuff. And the poor kid is just screaming. They're telling out they're enjoying themselves. Dad, in frustration, just goes, "Stop it! You're a terrible singer." Right? That is not. He's not saying that about the child. He's just
Because
upset
he had a
with
headache,
the
he was
situation.
tired.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not about you. It's about them.
Yeah. So then, in essence, this child who had the potential to sing and have a great voice and grow
They're
up
never
to
gonna
do
do it.
something was so hurt that the father, or I believe it was the mother, that said, "You have a horrible voice." She never sang again. And so, again, it goes back to the first one, being impeccable with your words, taking that extra minute or two to say, what am I saying right now? Is this intentional? What is the purpose of me saying this? Am I meaning to hurt someone? Do I need to hurt someone? Because what you say, your black magic, is very, very powerful.
Agreed.
Yep. So what about the third agreement? Don't make assumptions.
So the quote that we had was, "All the sadness and drama you have lived in your life was rooted in making assumptions and taking things personally."
A quote that I actually like and pertain to work a lot is, "It is always better to ask questions than to make an assumption, because assumptions set us up for suffering."
Yep.
I can't tell you how many times, T, at work, I just assume. I'm like, oh my God, this person didn't even try, didn't even show up, didn't even want to, whatever. And when you start building up on those thoughts, it doesn't hurt anyone else but yourself, right?
Yep.
Because then I fire myself up, I get upset, and I assume all of these things, when if I had just put away all those thoughts and I just pick up the phone and call the person and say, "Hey, this is the situation. Can you explain to me what happened?" They could have just said all of these things. I was late to work because my car broke down, because my mom was sick, because I was in the hospital. All of these things that I didn't take an extra minute. I just assumed.
Yes. And this is the don't make an assumption part is super important. And I think this is something I use in my professional life a lot. Because again, as leaders and people who oversee a large number of colleagues, it's important to not assume that this person is not motivated. So like a lot of times the results will come down, and I'm just like, you know what? This person who works for me, they're so lazy. They don't want to do anything. Like, look, that person's numbers have been going down every single week. What is going on? I'm gonna just do all this stuff and yell at them, all whatever. Right? Obviously, I'm not gonna yell, but I just had that mindset.
Oh, you don't yell?
I don't yell. I do not. I try not to yell. First agreement.
I yell sometimes.
But then I go back and I said, you know what? Let me just call. Hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
What's going on with you? And then I find out all these personal things are happening in their lives, and I'm just like, I am so sorry. I did not
You feel
know.
like an ass afterwards.
I know.
Right?
And I'm like, if it makes you feel bad, do you want a week off? Like I will
Oh, you
gladly
generous?
allow it. Like people need their own time, right? But it's just like, again, don't make the assumption. Don't just assume people are either not working hard enough or they're out to get you. Just ask. And
Yeah. What's that saying? If you assume, you make an ass out of
you and me. Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Totally true.
And then the one thing I like that we talked about in the review is the human tendency is to make assumptions about everything. This usually arises from the fear of asking for clarification. So
Why is that? Why do you think we're scared to ask for clarification?
I think we live in our own dream.
Yes, bingo.
Right?
Yeah. We don't want to see the truth.
Yeah.
It's easier and it takes less time, right? Because what you did was the right thing. You picked up the phone and you asked what happened. But a lot of people don't do that because you just don't have the time. You're rushing around doing other things that are important to you in your dream, that you don't take that moment to figure out what's going on in someone else's dream.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I mean, it's not easy. It's hard because we've been domesticated to be this way,
Yep.
to make assumptions, to feel rushed, feel like we don't have enough time to take a moment to stop and ask the questions. And then, like you said, we're kind of scared. We already know what we
Yep.
want to see and hear and feel, and maybe feeling and hearing another truth is foreign to us. It doesn't, if it's foreign, it's not natural, and it doesn't always feel good.
Yep.
So the other thing I want to tie into don't make assumptions is essentially when you are assuming, you are placing blame. Right? So things that we can do in practice is not just to think objectively and without assumption, but also to let go of the blame. As soon as you can let go of the blame, you can, in essence, experience emotional freedom and happiness.
Agreed. So what are some things in practice that we can do?
Ask a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And that's what I've learned to do at work a lot. As leaders, I think one of the biggest things that I have learned over the years is I don't need to be the one telling people what to do. I just ask a lot of questions now. And I end up getting more information, more value that way from hearing what people I work with, what they have to say.
Yep, agreed. And the second one is be curious and seek clarification, right? So kind of going back to my earlier story, pick up the phone, ask, hey, what's going on? I always want to make sure I understand this fully and, go from there. All right, fourth agreement.
Always do your best.
Yes.
I'm going to let you take this one because I know you really like this one.
All right, so the quote that we used was, when you do your best, you learn to accept yourself. So, one thing that this specific agreement kind of ties in the last three all together, right? So if you're impeccable with your word, if you don't make assumptions and you don't take anything personally, you just have to, last step is just do your best. The best we can, that's all we can really ask ourselves of ourselves in this world, is to just put in our 100% all the time. Make sure that whatever we do with our pure focus. And we're trying to make a better world. That's how I looked at it. Because it's so important for us to always go back to that. Hey, did I get 100% in this?
Yeah. And the most forgiving thing about this is your best is fluid. It can change day to day. So if you're going hardcore one day, it doesn't mean you have to be hardcore every single day of your life. If you're sick, if you're not feeling well, if you're tired, it's okay. As long as you're doing your best in that moment, then you don't have any guilt. You can't look back and blame yourself on anything. You don't regret anything. You just did your best as you could in that moment in time, and that's good enough.
Yes, agreed. This one is a pretty simple concept, but again, it's something that you have to kind of remind yourself: Am I giving it my all when whatever I do, and not just sort of doing things 30% of the time just because you need to get it done.
Yeah.
Whether it's work, whether it's playing with your kids, give that energy, give your 100% to everything you do
in that moment and time.
Exactly.
Yep. So giving your 100% of the time. Mm-hmm. And that key word is your 100%.
Exactly.
Yep.
All right.
So that kind of ties it up to the last chapter that kind of wraps everything together. And that's the Toltec path to freedom, breaking old agreements. And this one I actually really, really love because it is saying goodbye to who we were domesticated to be, being free and being strong enough to let go of some of our old beliefs. One of the quotes from this chapter is, "The freedom we are looking for is the freedom to be ourselves, to express ourselves." And I just think that's so powerful because so many of us walk around and we don't necessarily have the courage or the strength to express who we truly are because, again, we've been domesticated. We do what we think we're supposed to do. But this chapter gives you that permission and that freedom to break free from our chains and what we've been told to be who you are.
Yes, agreed. And also breaking the old freedom is also kind of getting rid of your old mindset a lot of times, right?
Yes.
So, on this path to self-development that both me and her have been on, at least for me, I know it's taken a lot to kind of get away from what I knew previously, some of the experiences I had, some of the opinions I had of myself and of others, So again, breaking those old agreements, getting out of your old dream that you had and creating a new one that really like
Yes.
fulfills you. And it's changed a lot. My relationship with my family, my relationship with my work as well. Like I've seen things more clearly. And it's interesting because you also find even close friends of yours that are still in their old dream, and no matter how much we try to bring them into their new dream, they're like, no, this is too hippie for me, whatever it is, right? So
And that's okay.
and it's okay.
Right? It's
yes,
okay.
everyone is in a
learns
different path of
on
life.
their own path. And,
Exactly.
but I think it's really cool, Tapas, that we have been experiencing this journey together because there's been many conversations where T and I are like, wow, we just see things so differently now.
Right.
And I actually feel a happiness that I never
Yes.
had before because I understand things differently and I feel things differently. I allow things to kind of just come and pass through, and then I can move on to something else. And it's very liberating to not have to hold on to something and not have to place a blame on something.
Yes, agreed. So this book, in totality, has been a huge life changer for me. I know for me, I've gone back to it quite a few times. Again, I primarily listen to a lot of my books on audio. So for me, if I end up buying the book, that means that book means a lot to me.
Yeah.
So I bought this book as soon as I got done reading on audio. I'm like,
Not because I made you buy it.
No, not at all. It was just me like, I gotta buy this thing, and ever since then, it's been on my nightstand every single night. Just whenever I need to, just go back to it.
Yeah.
A lot of times, I'm going back to the first agreement because it's something I'm still working on, even though I know I've gotten better at it. Yeah. But it is an amazing book. I hope you guys can all kind of share amongst yourselves and create a good discussion. What do you think?
Yeah. I want to end it with a quote that I actually really love from this book. Do not be concerned with the future. Keep your attention on today and stay in the present moment. Just live one day at a time. Always do your best to keep these agreements, and soon it will be easy for you. Today is the beginning of a new dream.
Yes. Love it.
I love that. So thank you guys so much. We're so happy to be able to share this experience with you. If you have any feedbacks, any recommendations, feel free to share. We'd love to connect with you. Welcome to Eat, Read, Sleep.
All right. Bye, everyone.